Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Similarly Different. On today's episode, we have a dear friend of mine who, if you listen to music, if you have a favorite pop artist, if you have looked at seen in the last decade or two who the top big people are, you know who this is. My dear friend, Chris Anokute. Did I say it right?
Perfect. I love the way you said it.
Now, if you don't know Chris, he has founded some of your favorite artists, from Katy Perry to BB Rexa. He has worked at Def Jam. He has worked at Virgin. He started by talking to Whitney Houston's dad at an SUV in front of a diner.
In front of a diner.
To try to get his way into the music industry.
Yep.
So today we're going to have him, and there is nothing we're really not going to cover because I think that's just how our conversations go whenever we talk.
Yep.
We go from here to there and everywhere.
All fluid, whatever you want.
So thank you so much for being here.
It was my pleasure.
Taking
I love
your
what
time.
you guys are doing. You gals, power trio over here, and just always love talking to you. So let's get into it.
Yes. So for those that don't know, you founded some of the most amazing artists in the industry.
I've worked for some artists. I worked for some great talent.
Yeah. And now you have evolved from those steps to have your own company and even mentoring young students, right? You were just telling me about it?
Yes.
So what is it that you're working on right now that you're about to launch?
We're launching, well, it's already established, Music Academy, but I'm running a new music academy called LAAMP, the Los Angeles Academy of Artists and Music Production. It was founded by my dear friend Stargate, who we had huge success with. They produced Katy Perry's Firework, Diamond single. So they've been friends for over 15 years. I started mentoring at workshops at their academy 2 years ago, and in the midst of ego, working for those students in a mentoring, coaching capacity really showed me another side of my future and changed my life. And they've been asking me to run the academy for a couple of years now, and I've been in my ego, but I just couldn't stop thinking about it. So I decided to run the academy for this 25-26 school year, 9-month intensive program, and I'm super excited about it because it's probably going to be the greatest work I'll do in my life. I love being a servant. I love giving freely and selflessly to dreamers, and I'm super excited. But I've been prepared for this moment. You know, it's hard for me to say I discovered talent because God created you in your mom's womb and knew who you were before you were formed, you know what I mean? So God discovers talent. I'm a vessel for talent. So I was fortunate enough to be a part of developing many successful artists at the start of their career or being a vessel in their career, whether it's, giving Rihanna, I know her as Robin Fenty, a demo called Ponder Replay when she was 15 years old, and that song ended up getting her record deal in 2005, and I published the first single, and she becomes a big star off of the single, the demo that I found. I developed the song with my writer and the producer who was my neighbor, and it becomes her song that gets her a record deal, and then she becomes a huge star. Or me meeting Katy Perry after she was dropped 3 times from a record company, and me being in a position to sign her and fight for her, and then sign Katy Perry, and she becomes a huge star, 11 #1 records in a row, Diamond album, Best New Artist nomination. Or, meeting BB Rexa as she was going through adversity when she was in a record deal with Island Records, and I was working at Island, and I asked my friend who was the head of the company to drop her so I could manage her when I left the company. And then I managed her to a record deal, managed her to her first publishing deal, her first tour with Nick Jonas, and 3 hit records with G-Eazy, Hey Mama David Guetta, and,
I still have videos from her first Troubadour performance.
Yeah, because, we were there.
Yeah.
300 people. Our dear friends, the Monsters and Strangers, developed her first EP. So I've always been a vessel. Iggy was my intern, and she was doing my receipts 3 days a week. And she was working for me and my dear friend at Interscope Records, George Robertson. And he was going to sign her, but he couldn't get the deal done. I didn't want to step on his toes, so I signed her to Def Jam Records. She was our intern doing our receipts, and she just wanted to be in the business. She was extremely ambitious. And, fast forward, Diamonds single, #1 records with Fancy. So I've always been a part of, developing talent and just being a vessel, but I wouldn't say I discovered anybody because I don't want to give myself that much credit. I'm very humble in my adult years to know that I'm just a vessel and I'm just a servant. So.
And I love that you do that because I think that it's very, very few times where we're able to bring ourselves back to humanize ourselves,
Yes,
even when
yes.
we're in such industries of entertainment, of music, of fame, and things of that sort. But where did your love for music come from? Because you've always been very, very focused, as you said,
Extremely
in developing, in going towards it, and even wanting to be in it however you possibly could. So where did it come from?
You know, I grew up in New Jersey, suburban, middle-class New Jersey, West Orange. I love listening to the radio, Z100 particularly, which played the mainstream pop hits. So I always had this fascination with just mainstream big pop records. I used to watch Michael Jackson on TV. I remember crying one day watching Michael Jackson perform. So I was just enamored by show business, lights, camera, action. I loved all the rap records of NWA and Biggie Smalls and that whole era of, Rockefeller records, and they had the starter jackets and the Yankee fitted caps. I was just enamored by the culture. I loved NSYNC and Backstreet Boys and Britney Spears. I loved pop. I was like a pop tart. I just loved all music. I was like that person who would listen to the hits. So if the song was a hit record, whether it was a hip hop hit, Eminem or Dr. Dre and NWA, or if it was a pop hit NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, or if it was an R&B hit, whether it was Jodeci, Escape, or SWV, or 702, or Darnell Jones, I knew the records, right? And I met this one of my dear friends growing up was Hakeem Bell. His father was in Kool and the Gang. His father's Kool from Kool and the Gang. So Hakeem had this studio, and I was like 16 years old, and he would let me come in his studio. He was like probably about 8 years older than me, but Hakeem was my friend, and I was always like a dreamer trying to hang out with all the local producers in our neighborhood, whether it was West Orange, East Orange, South Orange. A lot of people grew up around the area. Lauryn Hill grew up in South Orange. Wyclef grew up in Orange. Hakeem Bell lived in West Orange, Kool and the Gang. So I was always surrounded by people who were in the business. So I wanted to be a producer and a songwriter at first. And Hakeem Bell used to have me come to his studio to write songs. So I thought I wanted to be a songwriter, producer, because I just wanted to be the man behind the records, developing the talent. I just didn't have the stomach to endure because I didn't have the confidence to learn how to be a great producer, songwriter. So then I wanted to be an A&R guy, manager. I just wanted to find a way, like, who's the person behind the scenes that discovers talent. So I discovered that A&Rs do that. So I started trying to research who did A&R in the record business, how you get into an A&R position. So, I went off to college, graduated from high school when I was 17 because I'm a late birthday November. So I'm now in college at 17 years old, right? Going to Montclair State University, state school. But as I'm in college, I was able to get an internship working for, he's not like an uncle to me. He's more like a big cousin. Like in Nigerian culture, you call everybody your cousin. Yeah. His name is Stephen Chukwumba. He had an office in Montclair, New Jersey. So I was kind of like interning in his law firm, and he was connected in the entertainment industry. So he gave me the eyes to see, like, maybe you could work in the business because he knew people at like Def Jam and everything. And then I would also just go into the city and hang out in front of Justin's restaurant. Now, I'm not going to say who owns Justin's because he's not that good of a person. But at the time, he was on top of the industry, and he had a restaurant called Justin's. And I used to hang out in front of Justin's, literally driving my Ford Probe, red little hoopty Probe. I used to drive it into New York City and park it around the corner on 22nd Street because I didn't want anybody seeing that I drove a hoopty. I used to hang out in front of Justin's restaurant when I was 17, 18 years old.
Where do you think this, I'm just hearing this though, and you're so focused and dedicated at such a young age. Did it come from your family? It was just since you were born, you always had this personality?
Yeah, I just always had this eye for abundance, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm first generation Nigerian. My parents are immigrants from Africa, Nigeria. I was born in Oklahoma. I moved to Saudi Arabia when I was 6 months old. I lived in Saudi Arabia until I was just about 4.5.
Oh, wow.
My dad went to Oklahoma State University, got a master's in public health and a PhD in public health and a master's in biology. And the first job he was able to get after getting his PhD was in Saudi Arabia. So you come from Nigeria to America to pursue education. You have 4 kids. They're all born in red state, middle America. Yeah. The first job you get is in Saudi Arabia. You take the job because they're paying you maybe 80 grand a year, whatever at the time. So we all moved to Saudi Arabia, my whole family. When I was 4, I was born in Oklahoma, but I was only there for 4.5 months. And then I basically moved to Saudi Arabia for 4 years.
Wow.
And my dad didn't think it was the healthiest place to raise children, and especially for women. So he moved us to the place that he felt had the most, centralized Nigerians, because a lot of Nigerians would move to D.C., Philly, New York and New Jersey. So we ended up moving to New Jersey. He stayed in Saudi Arabia until I was about 13 years old. So my dad wasn't really in our life for those 7 years or so, but he was a provider.
Yeah.
So I just felt like, you know what, anything is possible. If my dad had the vision to leave Nigeria, come
Right.
to America, leave his family behind, and then go to Saudi Arabia to build his own abundance so he could take care of our family. That was instilled in me. So I just always had my eyes on doing something differently. My parents wanted me to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer, go to college. Everybody in my family is educated. My mom's educated. My dad's educated.
I think that's very also an immigrant family.
Yeah.
They just want you to be something that is very secure and high
Secure.
level.
Yes.
So that you could
Yes.
be good for
Yep.
the rest of your life. But okay, so now you were at the diner, you're able to knock on the window.
Yeah, I'm just hanging out in front of Justin's because I know that's where all the stars are hanging out. At the time, I did my research. It's not, you don't have the internet. You just know through reading like magazines like Word Up, you know what I mean? Like what's going on. So I knew at the time, Justin's Restaurant, 21st Street, Broadway, New York City is where everybody's at, and I need to be there because I need to meet so-and-so.
Somebody.
Like Russell
Yeah,
Simmons, or
yeah.
I need to meet the head of Sony Records, or I need to meet Whitney Houston. So I hung out in front of Justin's Restaurant, and there was a navigator, black Lincoln navigator, that said Nippy. And me being from New Jersey, I knew Whitney Houston's nickname was Nippy. So I just camped out in front of the SUV, also trying to see who I would see. Hopefully so-and-so would walk out. And I remember finally somebody got into the car, so I just waited my turn because there's pictures being taken, and I ended up knocking on the window. And I said, "Is Whitney in there?" I was just naive, you know what I'm saying? Childlike, free.
Yeah.
But
How old were you? 17?
I was probably turning 18 because I
Okay.
turned 17 in November of going into my college. So yeah, I was probably turning 18, right?
Yeah.
And I remember knocking on the SUV, and it was Kevin Skinner, who was John Huston's security guard, and John Huston, Whitney's father. And I just told him, I'm Chris Anokute, I live in New Jersey, I love your daughter, I grow up with, I know Hakeem Bell, whose father's cool together. You know, I'm dropping names
Yeah.
just to see
You're
if
like,
he
this
could
is the
trust
moment
me.
to do it.
This is my moment.
Yeah.
And for some reason, he just took a liking to me. So he told me to get Kevin's number. They invited me to his house in Mendham on Sunday. So now I'm invited to, and I'm told this is Whitney Houston's, one of her homes in Mendham, New Jersey. So I end up going to Mendham, New Jersey on Sunday for their dinners that they do on Sunday night, where a lot of their friends come out. And he became my first mentor. Like, an apprentice, to the point where I could ask him anything I wanted about the record business, management, for months. John Huston. And that was the first time I actually felt like seen, that somebody was going to take me under their wing. And he taught me so much about managers, what managers do. Obviously, he was managing his daughter, Whitney, at the time, the record business, everything he knew about that part of it. He's not an A&R person, he's a manager. So I started thinking, maybe I want to be like John Huston. I
Yeah.
want to be a music manager. Same time, my cousin, uncle, fake Nigerian uncle, you know, because everybody in
Yeah.
Nigeria is your uncle if they're Nigerian. If you meet somebody in America who's Nigerian, that's your cousin. So he got me an internship at Def Jam, working for Rob Mitchell, who was running A&R admin, and Rob Mitchell was his frat brother. So now I got an apprenticeship with John Huston, I got an internship at Def Jam, and I'm going to school at Montclair State University. So you know what I do? I drop out of school because my new education is going to be these opportunities.
Right.
And I learned the record business working at Def Jam. Ended up getting an assistant job. My job was A&R admin, which is artists and administration. So we're responsible for booking the studio, paying the producers, doing the split sheets, writing the lyrics, doing the credits, and also giving all the producers their paper checks. So Omari West used to always come into the office and sit right there on my cubicle. And I used to give him his checks. And he used to always say, I'm gonna be the biggest star in the world. These niggas don't know who I am. I know I'm just a producer, but I'm gonna be the biggest star in the world. And it was Kanye, you know what I'm saying? So I learned the record business and how it works just from a business standpoint, working at Def Jam, because I wasn't on the creative side, I was on the admin side. So I read every single record deal that came through my boss's desk. I read through every single producer agreement. I read through every single publishing split contract and really learned. And that's what really gave me confidence.
I really do think that's the best way in my personal experience to learn, because I also dropped out of college. I only did 2 semesters.
Same, so we're
because-
twins.
Yeah.
2 semesters.
I did 2 semesters, and at that point, it was either you want to move to LA and continue continue building this company that we just built, or do you want to stay in school and stay in Miami? And I was like, And I always say from the age of 18 to 26, it's like I went to Harvard for music,
Yes, you
but
did.
by living it. Because if I didn't know what a contract meant, now there was Google.
Of course.
If I didn't know how to use
Right?
QuickBooks, there was Google, there was
Right?
YouTube. And I remember when I created an internship program inside the company, I was like, there shouldn't be a question you're asking me if you haven't already Googled it.
Wow.
And it's because I taught myself that, and everybody else in the company did too, because we were just trying to figure it out. But I also think there's so much excitement in figuring it out and learning through experience than just learning sometimes through textbooks. And you're just like, well, how's the outside world? And because, you just said it yourself, like you got so much experience from that.
I feel like an expert. Like,
Yeah.
I can't phone it in. I know this stuff intimately.
Mm-hmm.
I know recording deals intimately. I know publishing contracts intimately. Right. I know what royalties, how they get paid intimately, because I was reading this stuff when I was 20 years old, 21 years old. And I'm 41 years old. This is 20 years ago.
Yeah.
There was no Google. There was no internet. You couldn't I had to read full books of everything
Yeah.
you need to know about the music industry to get information. So
And you become such a
I'm
sponge.
grateful. I'm grateful for that.
That's
that experience.
amazing.
So that
Now-
I was just a hustler, just trying to win and just trying to also change the dynamic of my family. Like I saw
Yeah.
my parents working hard, they didn't need any help, but I just wanted something different. I remember my mom working as a nurse and, working sometimes double shift. And we had a live-in nanny from Nigeria growing up that lived with us. We had a couple of them. That was our version of nannies. They would get Nigerian women that were younger who wanted to come into America for their green card, and my mom and dad would hire them to basically raise the 4 kids. And my mom was working double shift. My dad was living in Saudi Arabia. So I just wanted something different. Like I wanted to be successful in a different way. I wanted to be wealthy. And I wanted to have some significance in the world. I wanted people to know my name. I tell people a lot of times your early efforts in pursuit are driven by egos. Ego did drive a lot of my original pursuit.
Yeah. I feel like ego was driving it also just because you're so young and you start getting so much accessibility to things at such an early age. And one thing about you that I've always noticed is I personally have never heard a person say anything negative about you.
Wow.
And I've always
Count
admired
me
that.
up.
I've always admired that because I have heard about many people in the music industry. And what in that time in your life when you were 17, 18, starting in the industry, you have this hunger, you have this drive, but you also have this ego. Did you lead with ego for a long time?
I was always humble, but I had an innate, I'm going to be great, desire to be great, which was driven by ego. I want to be rich. I want to have money. I want to take care of my family.
Yeah.
I want to and at the end of the day, nobody was asking of that for me, right? I just that's what drove me. Like my mom is not going to work double shift.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I'm going to drive a Benz like my dad. Like I was just driven by that. I was feeling that. I was watching Lights, Camera, Action. I was watching superstars like Rockefeller Records and Jay-Z and Damon Dash and lifestyles of the rich and famous. And I was attracted to that energy at the time, to be honest. And a lot of that desire to want to be in those rooms drove my pursuit to be great. So I just was relentless. I was hanging out in the studio till midnight. I was at Def Jam until 10 p.m. And Leor was there, Kevin Lyles was there, Julie Greenwald was there, and they were there till midnight. And Kaiser was there, and it was like an academy. And I felt like I was a part of something. I used to see Damon Dash and Irv Gotti and Jay-Z walking the floors at 10 p.m. And I was like, listen, if they're here, I'm hanging out here.
Yeah.
I don't care if I don't need to be here. So I had no life. I was obsessed with the record business. I was obsessed with being at places, being at events. I was going to parties when I was 19 years old, getting in, hanging out with DJ Clue, just trying to be a part of the energy. And that's what fueled me, because I wanted to be in those rooms. I wanted to be great like those people I admired. Clive Davis was somebody I really looked up to because he discovered Whitney Houston. So I was very adamant about getting to know him and researching who he was and trying to show up to his events, even if I wasn't invited. So sometimes that's got to drive you.
And I think that when you're in the music industry, entertainment industry, or an industry like that where it's so captivating, but also there's so many like yous around, you want to make sure that you're not forgotten. You want to make sure that you make your point, that you make your stance, that you're not the overly pressuring person, but that you're there and that you're a good vibe, you're a good time, but that you're remembered for the right reasons.
Absolutely.
And did any of that at an early time start venturing in the wrong way? Because one of the things that I also admire about you and that I love that every time we talk is your love for God and your spirituality.
Yeah.
So how are you able, I guess it's a two-part question. One, how were you able to keep God in your life in that time when there's so much more excitement that could verge you into another direction? Or did you verge and have to bring yourself back?
Well, you backslide, but I always had a foundation of the Lord Jesus Christ. I mean, I gave my life to Christ when I was 17 years old at Christ Church in Montclair, New Jersey. And I saw that after that, my life changed because I started seeing opportunity when I was 18, 19, 20 early on. So I'm like, I got to give all the glory to God. So I knew that was the foundation of my gifts, was me giving my life to Jesus Christ. And I was born in a Catholic church. My dad went to church every Sunday. My mom went to church every Sunday. I used to go to church. I didn't really know the Lord, but I knew I had to go to church. So it was more stern and strict, but I didn't really know what I was doing. But my parents are extremely religious. My mom is extremely spiritual. She prays. She has prayer groups. She has rosaries. And my dad was very tough when he came back from Saudi Arabia, like strict. So I was also a little bit afraid of him. So I didn't want to disappoint my dad, and I didn't want to disappoint the Lord. So I always was a pretty good person, like integral.
Yeah.
Like not getting into trouble. My dad always said, don't ever bring a girl home unless she's your wife. Like don't ever have a child out of wedlock. Like those things stuck with me. So I just was always a pretty decent person. You know what I mean? Respected others.
I mean, and that's very,
Didn't get into trouble,
rare.
period.
That's very rare because it's clear that your foundation was so strong that even when you were in those situations, you didn't verge away from that because you knew that your successes that were coming, you gave it to God rather than ego.
Yeah, all my blessings come from my salvation. And my ability to keep myself out of trouble came from my fear of my father.
So now that was at 17, 18.
And it
And
my
it continued.
Whole life.
And it
Never wanted to
continued.
disappoint my family.
Yeah.
No bad, you ain't gonna hear nothing bad about me.
Yeah.
And obviously,
and I've never
our
had-
Heavenly
yeah.
Father too.
Yeah.
You don't want to disappoint that person, that ultimate creator, with something that you just do behind the scenes that your Father on earth may not know about, but you know what you do behind closed doors. So I always try to maintain a moral compass. We're not perfect. I'm a sinner.
course.
I've done things that I'm not proud of, but for the most part, I'm a pretty good person.
Well, I think also as a man, like I'm never going to be able to relate to you in that aspect because I'm a woman.
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
think I have different hormones. I have different
You do.
things inside of me.
For sure.
But when it comes to a man, I think the discipline of being able to know how to maintain your, I know how to say it in Spanish, I don't know how to say it in English, but your center, I guess,
Yes.
calm and disciplined is something that is very hard to do. And I've heard from men, it's very hard to do. But I think that great excellence comes when you're able to continuously work on it and tame it and control it rather than let it control you. And especially a setting like the one that you were at such a young age.
I was
Personally.
surrounded by all of it. Lights,
Yeah.
camera, action, sex, drugs, rock and roll.
Exactly.
And I enjoyed the opportunities. I enjoyed the access. I've dabbled and had some fun and partied, but I never crossed the line.
Yeah.
Never crossed the line.
Now, what happened when you got to the point in your life that you were like, okay, I've made it. I've gotten 1 check, 2 checks, 3 checks.
Yeah.
And you're like, I want more.
You know what?
Because I think
When you
that,
say I want more,
I think in men, I hear it a lot. It's like, I want to get to this place. And they get to that place. And then I want to get to this place. And then next thing you know, what can happen a lot of the times in very successful men is that then they never achieve enough and then they feel empty. And you see it sometimes in musicians, you see it in executives, you see it in famous people where they end up unhappy with what they've reached because they always want more.
yeah.
So how have you been able to be happy with what you've had every time when you've succeeded so many times at different levels?
You start to have new dreams, I guess, right? Because I want more, but the more I'm looking for is a different kind of abundance, right? It has nothing to do with ego anymore and access or worldly possessions or success in that way, right? It was always my dream to run a major record company. Like, I refer to myself as Chairman Chris because I'm the chairman as far as I'm concerned. And I run my operations. I'm the head of my show, obviously driven by the power of the Holy Spirit. But that was the only thing I probably wanted more of. But I had to reconcile with with who I am that I can't do that job.
Have you ever wanted to leave the music industry?
Yeah, I'm okay on it. Like, I can't serve two gods, right? And I was driven to be the chairman of a record company, particularly because I idolized Clive Davis and L.A. Reid and those kind of people. And until I became very close to some of them, like their right-hand men, I realized that I don't want to be that anymore. And I also realized that you can't compromise your integrity for a check. So there's certain artists and music that I can't exploit.
Yeah.
Because it's not uplifting to light, and positivity is destructive. So if I'm telling you I'm a man of God and I'm a man of integrity, but I'm promoting destruction, but I'm telling you I'm just the head of the company, so I got to do it. It's not really me, but I'm like, no, it's actually you. Because if you're running the record company and you're promoting artists that are destroying humanity via their lyrics or their imagery, then you are guilty. Not by association, you are guilty.
Yeah.
So I realized that I can never do that job, even if I'm qualified for the job. So I reconciled to myself that those dreams are no longer my dreams. And in the midst of ego, having maybe one of my best earning years, quotation earning years, working on, Katy Perry's new album. So just you say her name because she's a big pop star. Working on her latest album as an A&R person 17 years later, doing a venture with Universal where I, signed 2 artists to healthy deals and, helping Money Long get probably the biggest record deal of the decade as a new artist after helping take her #1 as her manager at the time. I was doing these workshops at LAAMP, the Los Angeles Academy of Artists and Music Production, the Artists Academy that I'm going to be executive directing. And in the midst of all that ego, hanging out in Santa Barbara in a $100,000 house with a private chef and pools and hot tubs.
$100,000? You mean $100 million?
No, $100,000 a month house.
Oh, I thought you meant worth, yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
100.
I was like, what? Yeah.
Just beauty upon beauty, right? And being able to have the opportunity to sign a record deal with Lucien Grange, who's the global chairman of Universal Music Group, probably controls over 51% of the music business. That's all ego.
Yeah.
This is the first time I killed the ego. It didn't satisfy me anymore. When I was mentoring these kids at LAAMP, the Los Angeles Academy of Artists and Music Production that my dear friend Stargate created, I felt whole again. I felt that childlike, dreamy Peter Pan. Oh my God, this is giving me chills inside. The way I felt when I was hanging out in front of Justin's restaurant when I was 19 years old, when I wanted to get into the record business. I felt that way all over again, and I realized that this is my calling. This is my second mountain, and this is what I'm supposed to be doing moving forward. So I decided that that's my next journey, like to be a servant. Like I don't have any desire to be in the record business anymore, to be honest. I'm still in it, and I have an obligation to certain artists, but I'm not excited to go sign the next, pop star. I'm not excited to work at a major record company. I don't care about a hit record, a #1, a Grammy Award, a VMA stage. I'm more excited with coaching the next generation of dreamers, whether it's an artist who wants to be a successful recording act, whether it's a songwriter who wants to be the next Esther Dean or Max Martin, or if it's a producer who wants to be the next Stargate or Tricky Stewart, Dr. Luke. Like, I'm more interested in just serving a dreamer and giving them all the years of wisdom I have, my undivided attention, quality of service, quantity of service, guidance, love, with no desire for if they make it, if they get a deal, if they have a hit record, if they get 10,000 followers, if they get 1 million streams. It's so relieving to serve with no desire for commerce. So that's where I'm at now.
When do you think, was it like a year or something happened that you were like, this no longer brings me the Peter Pan feeling?
Yeah, I mean, listen, over the last few years, I left a major record company in 2019. I was working for L.A. Reid at Epic Records. He was no longer the head of the company. I decided to bow out of my position at Epic Records. I started my own business. I launched a bunch of independent artists. I managed Money Long, had great success. The pandemic hit. I had a baby. But my greatest accomplishment to date, my son Phoenix. And I recently got divorced. So at the end of the day, you go through so much evolution in your life, you gotta face the music, literally. And I decided I had to go deep and figure out what makes me happy and reclaim my center. And that's exactly what I did over the last year. to be honest, is where I'm at. I'm going through it real time as we speak, but I'm very happy, clear, living in authenticity, healing, and kind of like a baby all over again. I feel like I died and I was reborn. So I think I'm back to the person that God created me to be.
Do you feel like there was any resources or people that helped guide you in realizing that you needed to, for better terms, reinvent yourself and rediscover yourself when you were going through that with the people you were around? Or was it something that you looked in the mirror and looked for on your own? Like, who did you lean on in that time when you were realizing that you were no longer feeling joy or,
Great question.
Because you've been a leader to so many people. You've been a mentor to so many people. So how did you come to that realization at that time? Because whether it's somebody watching, somebody listening, they could be either a mentoree to somebody or they could be a mentor. And I think in both aspects, you could either come from, you haven't made it yet and you feel lost. So how do I find guidance? Or I've made it and I'm back to feeling lost.
Yeah, you know what? Like, you have to sometimes face yourself in solitude. I probably started mourning the loss of my marriage in my marriage. You don't just wake up one day and say you want to be divorced. You wake up and you start to lack inspiration. You start to feel a little down and you wonder what's really happening. And then you start to realize what's happening and you maybe make a decision. Sometimes people don't. So in probably that morning and then the eventual ending of my relationship that I was in for 14 years and being home alone and having to face the silence alone without my baby in the background or my co-creator, I don't say ex-wife because co-creator, in the room or without, the noise I hear in our home, you start to listen to your intuition again, your Holy Spirit, and start to reclaim who you are and who you want to be. And that's what happened for me. Reading a lot of the Word of God and discerning it differently, listening to sermons, talking to my pastor, Teray Roberts, who've gone through similar things and getting his perspective. And then just realizing that a lot of the people that I was surrounding myself with in this new state of mind, I didn't want to be around. You know what I mean? And the people I was attracted to were not really in the music business at the highest level.
Yeah.
Like they were either like in it and not like that significant, but just dreamers. So I kind of felt like I could relate to them differently. It's weird. I wasn't around the hype anymore. I distanced myself from people that were full of themselves like I maybe once was. And I was attracted to different kinds of people. So my vibration level was evolving or shifting. And I just had to get clear with who I was and only wanted to stay in a state of mind that made me excited, inspired, secure, not insecure, and purposeful.
I think there's a lot of wisdom in what you were saying, though, because a lot of people, instead of sitting in their solitude and quietness, that would drive them insane and would rather be in a room filled with people, even though they're still feeling lonely.
Oh, yeah. No.
And not look at themselves, because it is harder to look at yourself and be honest with yourself in the downfalls, the failures that society may say that you've now reached, right? The ugly parts of you or the parts of you that you no longer recognize. But I'm a firm believer that if you go through it, you will always come out better than if you ignore it. Because eventually the pile of shit is going to smell because it's going to continue to get bigger.
Yes, it is.
And I think that that's beautiful that you decided to just kind of be one with yourself and say, okay, this is what's happening. This is what's going on. In this sector, in this sector, and in this sector, I don't really recognize anymore. In this sector, I'm not happy anymore. But I need to find that, like we said, Peter Pan feeling again. But in the healthy way. Rather than a Peter Pan feeling for 30 minutes, a Peter Pan feeling for an hour, for 2 days straight, and then a come down, And I guess I wonder if it comes from your family or if it comes from just the spirit inside of you that has just always wanted better, to make better decisions. Because for me, when I was growing up, I always made decisions that were hard for others. But for me, I'm like, well, if I do this, I cut the time that if I ignore it.
Yeah, I think I just always felt like a little bit of like an individual in my family. Like, growing up in a Nigerian household, there's a lot of like tradition, right? you have to marry a Nigerian girl, or you don't have to, but your mom puts pressure on you too, right? Didn't do that. You should go to college and get a degree and become a doctor, lawyer, engineer. Didn't do that. Raised in a Catholic church. We don't believe in divorce. Got divorced, right? So I just always kind of feel like I was always going to be myself, even if it wasn't what people thought it should be. And I kind of feel that's freedom because we are all individuals, right? And I saw that a lot of that tradition was driven by fear. Like, was my mom always happy?
Right.
Did my mom love her job? Did my dad love his wife?
Right.
Did my dad want to be married? Did my dad even want to be Catholic? Like, these things you ask yourself growing up, and, you know, there's a lot of resilience in my family. My sister is very successful, resilient, been through some adversity, has 3 kids that are now teenagers, that she's very successful. Her husband is fantastic. I got a brother who's mentally ill who lives at home with my parents, and, you know, we faced adversity there, and I've seen a lot of breakthrough. So I'm strong. I've been through a lot. Despite what you may see on the surface, my career and my persona in public, I've cried many nights. I've went through a lot of adversity in my family life. So I feel great. I feel abundant. I feel like I've blessed that I've been able to live the life I have and continue, and I feel like now my best is to come. I feel trained. Like these last 20 years, my first mountain of just love, relationship, career, purpose, like was training wheels for my true calling in life. And I'm ready to step into my most authentic self that's not driven by ego. That's really to serve others.
When you were growing up, how were you told to process emotions?
We never process emotions. I may have seen my dad cry once. I may have seen my mom cry once. So I don't really get emotional often. My co-creator was very emotional often and brought that side out of me, which I'm very grateful to her for. Because I never said I love you. I never said I miss you. I remember telling my mom I love her probably for the first time in my early 30s. Like, we never sat at dinner tables growing up. We never ate dinner together. We never said I love you to each other, our brothers and sisters, my mom and dad. I never heard my mom say I love you to my dad or vice versa. I never see my parents hug, kiss, hold hands.
I think it's such an
never
immigrant
seen none
thing.
of that stuff in my life. So when I used to see my co-creator do that with her mom, or I used to see her say I love you to her sisters, I used to be like, that's weird. You say I love you to your sister? Aren't you supposed to say I love you to somebody you're in love with? I didn't know. So we didn't have that growing up. You don't cry. You got to be strong. So it takes a lot for me to cry. I remember, you know, the first time I remember myself crying was seeing certain things in my household, but I haven't cried in years. I probably could count on, you know, 3 times I've cried in the last 10 years.
So how do you process your emotions as a man that has gone through quite a few different things, from adversity to different career jobs, from highs and lows in careers to highs and lows in your personal life? How do you process that? Because I think that's such a hard thing that men do, of not processing, especially Latino and Black.
Yep. How do I process it? I mean, I think venting is good. So if you have a partner to vent to, and they could potentially...
So who do you vent to now if you're divorced?
Stroke your ego to make you feel good temporarily. Now, how do I process those things? You just like pray.
Okay.
Right? You pray, you center yourself, you find other people who have gone through similar situations. Like, you know, a couple of my friends are divorced and we have a lot of chats about it, and we trade notes and they give me confidence and they give me tips on XYZ. So you try to find community that can relate to what you're going through so you can just have a sounding board. So I think that's important.
Do you have any healthy habits?
Yeah, I work out. I'm on the treadmill. I'm doing hikes every morning. I try to drink a lot of water in the morning. I try to pray. I try to go to sleep and sleep well. I sleep usually by 9:30 at night. So that's healthy. You know, I do love French fries and, you know, sometimes bad foods, but I work out the next day so I could, but I got to start eating more healthy, but I'm eating healthier. But you don't always have to process everything.
Okay, tell me more.
Because at the end of the day, and you don't always have to be emotional about everything.
I don't think you'd always have to be emotional about everything.
It's not that serious.
Yeah.
At the end, we win. And that's the way I look at life. Like, I'm the child of the Most High. At the end, we win. So whatever I go through is temporary. So I don't necessarily have to process it. I just have to get through it. And I've gotten through enough. And I know by history, historically, I always came up for air. So there's nothing I could go through that I'm not going to come up for air. Like just thinking about yourself drowning and you can't breathe.
Yeah.
I always come up for air. So I don't know if you always have to process everything you go through. You just have to go through it and endure. But at the end, you
But
will
don't you think
come
that's
up for air.
processing? I think
but
there's a difference between processing and sulking.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Because you just said you're drowning, but you come up for air.
You come up for air.
Which means you're still feeling the stuff, but then you come out of it at the end of the tunnel. So what you're not doing is sitting in a couch and sulking to the point that you can't climb out, but you felt the pain through it.
Oh yeah, you feel the pain, you feel the regret, but you just gotta live, right? So you gotta stay busy.
You
gotta
can't be in a
focus
victim mentality.
Yeah, I'm never a victim.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So you gotta keep it moving. You gotta stay healthy. So I guess, leading a healthy lifestyle, keeping your heart racing, breathing, eating well.
Being honest.
Being honest with yourself about, like, it is what it is. I made this decision. I got to deal with the
accountability.
financial repercussions of it. Accountability. Staying busy.
Yeah.
Focusing on projects that inspire you. Surrounding yourself with positive people that uplift you, that you could trade notes with. Going to church if that's something that works for you. Reading the Bible if that's something that works for you. Reading self-help books if that's something that keeps your mental health. Staying off of things that bring you to that low vibration. Not listening to music that may bring your frequency down, not having spirits interrupt you like drinking alcohol or doing narcotics. All those things can manipulate your energy, right?
Yeah.
And especially if you're going through something that's negative or unfortunate and you're now also drinking wine or drinking liquor or smoking marijuana or whatever, it could bring your energy to another low. So just being sensitive of those things or those habits that may affect you when you're going through those times and abstaining from sex or intimacy and just that energy field that is also
I actually
sometimes going a different direction.
Now that you went into the sex topic, like I did that for 2 years after a relationship.
Okay.
Because of the fact that I, again, stand by, I processed, I didn't sulk, but
Okay,
I
you
processed.
processed.
I wanted to process the reality of this did not work out.
Okay.
I want to take accountability, not place blame on myself, but take accountability because at the end of the day, a relationship is two people. So I want to be accountable for what did I do wrong that I could have probably shifted or that I need healing from my childhood maybe, that I need healing from and I need to mature in, that I need healing from and understanding and wisdom and learning in how do I actually process these things better. And I don't want to confuse it with my ego being rubbed by interacting with a male that's going to know me on a surface level, may come and go, and may actually bring me down every so often and confuse me when I'm trying to figure out what's in this pot.
Okay.
So for me, it took a total of 2 years, but it didn't take a total of 2 years. It took really 6 months. But once I felt so good at 6 months, I did not want anyone to disrupt it.
I know.
And at that point, I was like, you got to be bomb to disrupt it. Because you have to know, you have to see me, you have to put in effort. And it's not effort to have sex with me. It's effort to get to know me.
Yes, that's the romance part.
Exactly. And I think that's so beautiful, especially today in a world where I call it microwavable dating.
Ooh, I know. Everybody's microwavable.
It's like everyone's into
dating.
TV dinners.
I know. And the dating
And then when
apps,
they get, the dating apps
and the one-offs.
And then it's like, if Monday pisses you off, you're not going to tell Monday that they pissed you off. You're just going to go hang out with Tuesday. Because by Friday, Monday no longer pissed you off because Tuesday and Wednesday annoyed you. So then you're going to call Monday into Friday again.
And the idea of you even having a Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday makes me already feel like I don't even want to be talking to you. Because for you to have that much, time on your hands to build relationships, that these are some of the most significant relationships you could build in life, right? So you really tell me that you are rotating between 2 or 3 intimate relationships. That scares me already.
Well, first of all, it's dirty.
Well, yeah, it's dirty.
It's dirty. I don't care if you're using protection or not. Like, it is dirty. It is energy. You are shifting. And for me, the biggest thing is that you are not getting at depth with no one.
With no one.
There is no way you can possibly get to know someone or someone get to know you when you're switching people so often. A friend of mine recently was telling me something about someone that she was dealing with, but then mentioned somebody else and then mentioned someone else. And I said, what are you doing?
Yeah, like you're confused.
I was like, how can you
You're
even see
confusing
how you
me.
feel about this person when you have your energy also split here?
Yeah.
And I've just always been a person where if I want to be my greatest self for me and to truly, like, if God was to come down, I could say I did the best I possibly could in every sector of my life. I can't make it into a pie. Relationships are not a pie, and each person is not a slice.
Yeah, okay. I like that.
You know?
That's facts.
And I get it that as we go in relationships, we give a little bit of ourselves to this person and a little bit of ourselves to that person. But I do believe, and I actually heard this in a podcast, that while you give yourself to someone in a relationship, once you really are dead with that relationship, it's kind of like you're putting new soil and it would blossom new flowers. But if it is not a relationship, but it's just interactions that you're doing, you're just picking the petals and the petals aren't growing.
Whoa.
And the soil is starting to get dirty, it's going to die, and you're not even realizing it because the soil is an actual when you have depth with a person. And I said, you see, this is why I'm over here just waiting for my soil to be beautiful. I am doing, my flowers are coming out. And until someone is actually going to take care of the plant and vice versa, it just doesn't make sense to me.
you want to become the person you want to attract, right?
Yeah.
And that spirit, like that intimacy between a lover is so significant that you got to take it with like caution,
Right.
but also freely as well when you do attain it. Like you can't be afraid to give your all. And I want to give my all to everything. Imagine if I told you that I'm going to service a talent or I'm going to coach a student, but I'm not going to give you all of my energy, quality of energy, quantity of, so going above and beyond, right, to service you. So there's reciprocity between us. You leave this transaction feeling like, yo, Chris Anokute really gave the best of himself to me. So if I'm doing that in a business relationship,
Right.
why won't I do that in a love relationship? But a lot of times we feel afraid to give our all in relationships because we don't have all to give, because we're going back and forth between multiple potentials. And I don't have time for multiple potentials. I'd rather just have great friends that I build with, that I could watch, I could continue to evolve on my own, give my attention to my son, and be abundant, and just be happy knowing that I'm good.
Yeah.
Just the way I am. And then somebody enters my life casually because it's just the way God wanted it to be. I do believe in God's will. I just believe that, you know, if you truly believe in and have a desire for love and that kind of abundance, you will attract it, but you have to be careful. You can't be afraid. You can't be afraid to risk it all, give it all. So I just don't believe in like serial dating. I don't need to be intimate. I was in a relationship for 14 years. I was married for 9 years. My co-creator was my best friend since I was 13 years old. I know what depth is, and I got divorced. So imagine that. So somebody I knew for 29 years, I dated for 14 years, I've been married for 9 years, and we could still split, just goes to show you, you really have to take your time, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna just like jump into any car. I'm not just gonna lie with anybody because that stuff is very important.
Do you think men versus women have a tendency to have fear to get close with women on a deep level?
I prefer to get close. If I'm not close to you, I don't trust you.
Okay, you.
On a deep
but
level.
From your experience of
Right.
being with high-profile men, high successful men, do you think men have a hard time being able to find or go into depth for a woman out of the fear?
Oh yeah, I think there's some type of, you can't know too much of me. Because God forbid, you could use it against me, or now you've seen me in a vulnerable, which may be weak position. Men may assume being vulnerable is being weak. Like, I shed too much to you, and now all of a sudden you saw that side of me, and now you don't see me as this mighty man anymore. But actually, I think vulnerability is your power.
I think vulnerability is so
people, as you
strong,
get
yeah.
older, you realize that the more vulnerable you are, the more attractive you are, the more authentic you are, the more you light up the room. You know what what I mean? And I think early days, I was probably insecure in a relationship, fear of looking a certain way, hence why maybe there's certain characteristics that I've had in my prior relationship that were driven by fear because I wanted to look a certain way. I wanted to be a certain way.
Yeah.
And I also knew that, I could have easily fell into that category of wanting to just be a single man in LA, living abundantly with, beautiful people. And I was afraid that could potentially be the reality. So I wanted to kind of get into a relationship quickly and stable myself because I felt that was important to me because I saw that at home. And now as I'm older, I've realized that you don't need to be in a relationship to feel worth. 2, you could be authentic about how you really see your relationship evolving without the fear of losing your partner because you have to attend to certain needs of codependency, or you have to earn a certain amount of money or pretend like you have a certain amount of money or take care of certain things. A lot of men sometimes are fronting, right? Or they assume that if I provide, I'm going to get.
Yeah.
But how about if you don't provide? How about if you just say, you know what? That's not how I feel about life.
Well, I think
that's not how I see the world. Maybe
Yeah.
I want you to be a partner in my business. Maybe I want you to provide.
Right.
What's wrong with that? Do you think you're going to lose her if you tell her you're not going to pay her bills?
Right.
Right? And a lot of times as we grow up, especially working in show business and you're earning at a young age, sometimes you pay for play. Sometimes you think you have to, or you think if you don't show up financially, you're not worth it. But at this particular point in my life, like I am so free and authentic and clear on who I am and also what I want in a partner that I'm not going to make any mistakes on my behalf, and I'm also not going to settle.
How do you calm the animal inside of you when you see it waking up?
Remember the outcome that you just lived. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to repeat mistakes because this second half is going to be the greatest abundance of my life.
Would you
I'm
get
not
married
gonna
again?
Oh, 1,000%.
Me too.
I'm actually looking for a life partner.
Yeah.
Nobody ever sets out to get divorced. Nobody
Yeah.
ever sets out to get married. And when you say death do us part, you mean it from the deepest part of your soul. When you co-create with somebody and you have a child, that's a God thing, right?
Right.
So you expect to be with that person for the rest of your life. But sometimes things don't work out, and that's okay. But would love to have another partner that I could live the rest of my life with,
Yeah.
1. 2, happy to have more children.
Okay. Just so you guys know, Chris Anokute is single. This is his dating profile now on
You know
this
what I'm saying?
podcast
We
of
ain't doing no
Similarly
Hinge,
Different.
we ain't doing no Raya. Happy to have more children. I'm happy to have it. I didn't always think I did, but happy to have more children. I want to help her in a partner.
You want to help her, or you want to help
I want
her?
to help her
Okay.
in the biblical sense.
Yes.
I want to help her. I'm looking for something different. I'm looking for somebody who's going to really, really like align with me spiritually,
Okay.
emotionally,
Okay.
and help us.
What are 2 other things that you're looking for in your future partner?
Somebody who's a visionary,
Okay.
has a business desire to earn.
So you don't want like a person that is just waiting for you to basically
Oh,
pay
no.
her bills.
I truly believe in us doing our part together financially. I believe 2 incomes are better than 1.
Yeah.
And I want my partner to have a very strong desire to make a difference in the world in a grand way.
I think you're gonna find
I'm
that.
attracted
Yeah.
to that person. I'm attracted to myself. How about that? You know what I'm saying? I'm attracted to myself every time I look in the mirror. I love me. So I'm attracted to the person who dreams big, who wants to be significant, who wants to do great things and travel and make an impact on people's lives, who wants to serve, co-create, help me, nurture, because it's reciprocal. You help
Of
me, I
course.
help you, and just be great. So you got to become the person you want to attract, right? So I'm just going to continue to live my life in
Yeah.
service and greatness, and hopefully continue to earn and continue to dream big and want to be significant and impactful and serve it. And
What
hopefully
is-
I attract that person.
What is something that you feel you're still working on in yourself?
Patience is something that I have to work on.
Okay.
I'm not always patient.
Okay. In the sense of results?
No, I'm just not always patient with projects, my dreams, how
Timeline of
relationships
things, yeah.
end or evolve, where they end up, personal business too, right? Financial investments, not always patient. Like looking for the quick win
Yeah.
So I think patience is definitely something that's going to be a big part of my next chapter.
You know how God builds your patience?
How?
By making sure to test it.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to be tested this season with just being patient and seeing things through. And don't get me wrong, like, certain decisions I've made, I'm very content with the decisions I made in my life.
Yeah.
I don't have any regrets, right?
Yeah.
Every decision I made, I wanted to make. But I think my desire to attain things quickly sometimes could be my downfall.
Yeah.
Or opportunity, or to see progress happen quickly. Sometimes I just want to get it done. Yeah. So I think this next season I'm going to have to be stable in my patience.
What is success to you now that has changed from success for you in the beginning?
So there's nothing about material, cash, persona that means anything to me now. Mm-hmm. The only thing that really excites me is the way other people feel when I leave the room. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't need to know my name. I want to be significant to you today. I want to leave this room and have you feel seen, have you feel heard, have you feel inspired, and have you feel like your dream could come true. And that, to me, is the most success I could have, right? So I just want to serve selflessly, freely, with no desire for commerce.
I love that.
I just want to serve selfishly and freely with no desire for commerce. And commerce is a transaction. Commerce is sales. Commerce is stats, data. I don't care about none of that stuff. I don't care about any of that hype and materialism. All I care about is the impact that I made into your life today. So that's success for me, and I'm so excited to service all these students. I'm so excited to be a great friend to all the friends I have in my life. I love having conversations in the morning when I'm hiking. I love talking to my homegirls about their relationships. I love talking to my friends who recently got divorced and giving them a pat on the back. I love talking to my successful friends who are going through something spiritually and they want to counsel with Chris Anokute. I just love being a light in people's lives with no desire for commerce. And for 20 years, I've been driven by commerce. Like, imagine waking up every single day looking at the charts. Imagine waking up every single day looking at followers, looking at radio positions, looking at Billboard magazine, looking at comments that they write about your artist, looking at ticket sales.
Yeah.
It's stressful.
Yeah.
And I've been spending the last 2 decades, at least the last decade, driven by commerce, driven by success, driven by Billboard 40 under 40, 30 under 30, who they writing about, what is this artist I'm working for doing, do we have a hit record, is it going top 10, how many Shazams do we have, how many records did we sell this week, how many followers did she get, is that video working, how many views does she have on YouTube? I don't care about none of that stuff anymore. And it feels so free because now I could live the authenticity that I always had, which was when I first got into the record business, I didn't care about any of that. Like, I really, when I first got in, even before, I just was a dreamer. I saw Michael Jackson on TV. Yeah. I saw NSYNC and I saw Jodeci and Escape, and I was excited by lights, camera, action. I didn't know you could make money. I didn't know, like, I even told myself, if I can make a school teacher's salary, which was $40,000 a year, I will be in the music industry for the rest of my life. This is the dream I had when I was 16 years old. I said, if I can make a school teacher's salary, which was $40,000 a year, I will be in the music industry for the rest of my life, even if I had to move to a different country, like I said it, like Nigeria, to just work for artists in Africa. I just want to be in the music and serve talent. And then you get into your ego, you start seeing other people have success, you say you want that, then that starts to drive you. And you know what? Ego sometimes needs to drive that first mountain. Now, kill the ego. And sometimes killing the ego is going through this kind of adversity where you almost had to kill yourself. You had to, I decided to end my marriage and, have total respect and love for my co-creator. But that's a big decision to make.
1,000%.
It's not just emotional, it's time.
Yeah.
14 years, 29-year friendship, 9 years marriage, money, persona. Like, imagine all my friends and family
Society.
that tell me, oh, Chris, you just got divorced, you're a single father. Like, I thought you were a Christian. The church, my parents. So this is all part of, like, killing the ego. Because maybe being married was ego. Maybe having a family and living in Brentwood was ego. Maybe being a Christian is ego. Who knows? But I had to kill the ego, and I had to basically get to the center of who I am. And, I love the Lord. I love spirituality and learning more about the Lord and consulting with my friends who are in the Word and reading self-help books. And I just feel like my best is now to come. Like, I feel very free. I feel more aligned with my truest self, the one that God created, more than I've ever been.
So on Similarly Different, I like to be able to see the similar differences that we have, because if we take time to actually get to know each other, we see that we are actually a lot alike. So what in you do you feel made you different to be the person that you are today?
I think fear of God. And it's not a fear of God like, oh, let me not act up, but I just have a real like spiritual compass of belief in the deepest part of my Holy Spirit, right? Of just trying to be the best human being I could be. So everything I do is always somewhat driven by integrity and a desire to make a difference and be a good steward.
Yeah.
Right? Whether it's in business and negotiation and the types of artists I work for, the kinds of music I exploit and promote.
Yeah.
I just always want to make sure I'm doing the best work. And when I say the best work, I'm not talking about accolades. I'm talking about like work that makes my creator proud, if you know what I mean.
So non-ego, just spirit.
I just want to make our Heavenly Father proud as
Yeah.
much as I can. Like, we're not perfect, but I always want to make sure I'm doing my part on this earth to be a light worker as best as I can. In every room I am, in every conversation I have, and in anything I promote and market and spread. If I'm giving you information, it got to be good food. I try my best, and there's times in my life where I felt like I backslid or I served my ego. But as I've gotten older, I'm very cognizant of what I'm doing, and I'm very aware, and I'm very clear, and I'm very intentional. So I'm grateful for that clarity. But there's been times where I may have done things to earn, or I may have compromised not compromised my integrity, because I'm not necessarily doing it, but I didn't speak up because I didn't want to interrupt the way things were flowing, even though I wasn't aligned with the flow. Now I speak up. I don't take part in anything that I'm not aligned with spiritually, and that I don't believe is aligned with being a light bearer that we are called to be. So
I love that. Well, I'm so grateful for you being
I
on my
appreciate you.
episode.
Of
I hope
course.
you enjoyed talking to me, and I hope everybody that
course.
listened and watched got some gems, because there was a lot of them.
I think so. We definitely hit a few things, but I appreciate you, just the platform you give, us all. And it's not about, what you do. We all bleed the same. So I'm grateful that I never did a podcast before.
Really? Is this your first podcast?
Yeah. I never done a podcast interview before.
Wow.
And the reason, and I've been asked by so many people, and a lot of them are driven by, the industry, right? The record business. We want to talk to you about X, Y, Z. I'm just not in that ego, so I just don't want to talk about the record business all fucking day. I want to talk about life, love, heartbreak, God, and I felt like your podcast was different. Like, it wasn't driven by showbiz and chart success and who's who. It's driven by humanity.
Yeah.
So that's why I wanted to do yours. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Well, that's all for this episode, and until next time.